The mountain was silent, covered in endless snow. Only the wind howled like a wild beast. The storm had lasted for 3 long days, and inside one dark cave, an alien mother and her child were trapped. The cave was cold, so cold that even the stones seemed to breathe ice. The mother wrapped her thin arms around her little one. Her skin was pale, her breath weak. She had used every piece of cloth, every shred of fabric, to protect her child from the freezing air. Still, the child shivered. They had run here to escape. The storm, thinking it would pass, but it did not. The entrance of the cave was blocked by snow, and they had no way out. At first, they thought they could wait, but days passed and their food ran out. Now only silence and hunger lived with them. The child whispered, "Mother, I am hungry." His voice was small, almost fading into the air. The mother's chest ached. She had no answer. Her hands touched the empty bag beside her, nothing inside, no bread, no fruit, not even a crumb. She closed her eyes, trying to stay strong. "Sleep, little one," she whispered. "Sleep and dream of warm places." But the child did not sleep. He pressed his face into her chest, listening to her heartbeat, afraid it might stop. The storm outside grew louder. Snowflakes slipped through cracks in the cave, melting into drops of water that froze again. The mother knew they could not last much longer. Her body trembled, not only from cold, but from weakness. She had not eaten in 2 days. Every bit of food she found, she had given to her child. She thought of the past. She remembered green fields under her world's twin suns. She remembered laughter and family, that life was gone, destroyed by war. Now it was only her and this child, her last hope. If he died, everything would end. The cave echoed with silence, broken only by the faint groans of the wind. The child began to cough. His lips had turned pale, his eyes heavy. The mother shook him gently. "Stay with me," she begged. "You must stay awake." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Freezing on her skin, she felt helpless. For the first time, she thought maybe the mountain would claim them. Maybe no one would ever find them. They would be bones in the snow, forgotten. Her body wanted to give up. Her mind screamed to fight. She pressed her forehead against the cold cave wall. Her breath fogged the stone. She prayed, not to the gods of her people, not to the stars above, but to anything, anyone who might hear. "Please," she whispered, "do not let my child die here." The child stirred weakly in her arms. "Mother, will we see the sun again?" he asked. His eyes were big, full of fear. She wanted to lie, to promise him, but the truth pressed too heavy on her chest. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Yes, we will," even though her heart was breaking. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time inside the cave had lost its meaning. The mother's body ached, her legs numb, her arms heavy. Her child's breathing was slow, shallow, like a candle's last flicker. Suddenly, she thought she heard something. A sound, different from the storm her ears strained. Was it footsteps? Or only her mind playing cruel tricks? She held her breath, listening. The cave was silent again. Only the storm, only the endless storm. She shook her head, telling herself not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break the heart. But then, there, it was again, a faint crunch of snow, closer this time. The mother's heart leapt. She pressed the child tighter against her, her eyes wide. Was someone out there? She crawled closer to the blocked entrance. Her fingers dug into the icy snow, trying to clear a space. Her nails bled, but she did not stop. For a moment, she thought she saw light, a faint flicker breaking through the wall of white. Her voice cracked as she tried to call out. "Help," she whispered. Too weak, her throat was dry, her lips cracked. She tried again, louder this time. "Help us!" The sound vanished into the storm, swallowed by the wind. No answer came. She slumped, back tears stinging her eyes. Maybe it was no one. Maybe the mountain was laughing at her hope. She looked down at her child. His eyes were closing, his breathing was faint. Panic struck her heart. She shook him again. "Stay awake," she begged. "Don't leave me." The child whispered one last time, "I am so cold, Mother." His voice was fading like a dying flame. She wrapped him tighter, rocking him in her arms. She pressed her lips against his hair, whispering, "I will not let you go. I will not let this cave take you." But deep inside, she knew their time was running out, and outside in the storm, unseen by her, a lone figure was moving through the snow, following the faint sound of a voice carried by the wind. Heavy boots crunched the ice. A light swayed in the storm. A human had heard. A human was coming. The storm outside did not stop. It raged against the mountain like an endless roar. Inside the cave, the alien mother sat with her child pressed against her chest. His body was light, too light, as if the hunger had taken away his strength. Her eyes stared at the shadows on the cave walls, shadows made by the small fire she had tried to keep alive with broken sticks and pieces of cloth. But now even that fire had died. Only smoke and ash remained, and the cold had returned like a knife pressing against their skin. The child lifted, his head weakly, his lips cracked, his small eyes full of tears. "Mother," he whispered, "I am hungry. I am so hungry." Her heart broke again. The words stabbed deeper than any blade could. She looked at him, remembering the promise she had once made long ago when they still had a home. She had sworn to him, "I will never let you starve. I will always feed you." But here in the frozen cave, her hands were empty. She had given him every piece of food she had. She had given up her share so that he might last a little longer. Now her stomach twisted with pain, and her body shook. With weakness still, she could not let him see her despair. She pulled him closer, kissing his forehead. "Do you remember the taste of sweet fruit?" she asked softly. "The red ones from the valley?" The child nodded slowly, his lips curved in a faint smile. "Yes, Mother, they were sweet. They were soft." She closed her eyes, forcing herself to smile too. "Then think of them now. Pretend the sweetness is still on your tongue." But as she said those words, she felt her chest burn because she knew dreams could not fill an empty stomach. Pretending could not keep him alive. The wind screamed outside. Snow pressed harder against the blocked entrance. It felt like the mountain itself wanted to bury them alive. The child's small hands clutched her arm. His voice cracked. "Mother, will we die here?" She froze. Her heart stopped for a moment. She wanted to lie, to say no, to promise that rescue would come. But his eyes, wide and afraid, begged for truth. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "No, my child. I will not let you die." Her voice trembled, but her words were firm. "I promised you once, and I will keep that promise. I will never let you starve, never." The child leaned against her, his breathing shallow but trusting. "I believe you, Mother," he whispered, and then he closed his eyes, trying to rest. The mother held him tightly, rocking him gently. She repeated the words again and again in her heart. I promised," but her mind screamed a cruel question. How will you keep it? How will you keep him alive with nothing left? Her eyes searched the cave in desperation. The walls, the floor, the frozen ceiling. She looked for anything. Roots, insects, water dripping from the stone. Anything that could keep her child alive for one more day. But there was nothing. Only rock and ice. She pressed her forehead against the cold stone, whispering prayers again. Please, someone, anyone, hear me. Do not take my child. Take me instead, but not him. Minutes turned into hours, and still the storm raged on. The mother's body shook with cold, but she forced herself to stay awake. She dared not close her eyes, not when her child's life depended on her strength. At last her ears caught a faint sound again, different from the storm. A crunch, a shift of snow, like footsteps. Her breath caught in her throat. She crawled, closer to the blocked entrance, her hands raw, bleeding from scraping at the snow before. She pressed her ear against the wall of ice. And there, it was clearer now. Heavy steps, moving closer. Her heart raced, Hope flickered inside her, fragile but alive. She turned back to her child, shaking him gently. "Wake up, little one. Someone is coming." The child stirred, opening his eyes slowly. "Someone," he whispered, his voice thin, barely alive. "Yes," the mother said, forcing a smile through her tears. "I think so. I think someone is near." But then fear struck her chest. What if it was not a rescuer? What if it was a beast drawn by their weakness? What if hope was only another cruel trick of the storm? The footsteps grew louder, closer. Each crunch of snow sent a shiver down her spine. She pressed her child against her chest again, shielding him with her own body. Her heart pounded, and then, through the cracks of the snow, a faint light appeared, flickering like a star. Her eyes widened. It was no beast, no monster. It was a torch, held by someone outside. Her lips trembled. She shouted with all the strength left in her body. "Here, we are here." Her voice broke into the storm, weak but desperate. For a moment, silence followed. Her hope almost died again. But then, a voice came, muffled by the snow. A voice she did not recognize. Rough but clear. A voice not of her people. "Hold on, I hear you," it shouted. Her eyes widened in shock, her chest tightened. That voice, it was human. She pressed her face into her child's hair, whispering, "Someone has come. Someone is here. We are not alone." But she also knew one thing. Humans were strangers, unpredictable. Some said they were dangerous. Some said they were cruel. Her heart battled between fear and hope. Should she trust this human? Or had the mountain simply given them into new hands that might harm instead of save? The child looked up at her with weak eyes. "Mother, promise me, we will live?" She kissed his forehead again. "Yes, my child," she whispered, holding him close. "I promise you, we will live." Outside, the sound of hands digging into snow grew louder, closer, stronger. The mountain cave that had been their prison was about to open. The storm still screamed outside, waves of snow crashing against the mountain walls. But inside the frozen cave, a fragile silence fell. The alien mother's heart pounded, for she had heard it clearly this time. Footsteps, steady, heavy, and, drawing nearer, her child stirred weakly in her arms. His lips moved, but no sound came. She leaned close and whispered, "Do not give up. Someone is coming." Her own voice shook, half with hope and half with fear. Beyond the thick wall of snow, the sound grew louder, boots crunching into the ice, one step after another. It was no animal, no beast of the mountains. This was deliberate, purposeful. Then came the voice again, muffled by the snow but strong. "Hold on. I hear you." Her chest tightened. It was a human voice. She had only heard such voices in stories. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Some said they were kind, some said they were dangerous. But right now, it was the only sound that mattered. She pressed her trembling hands against the icy barrier. "Here!" she cried. "We are trapped. Please help us." On the other side, the footsteps paused. Then the sound of digging began. A heavy tool struck against the packed snow, breaking it apart bit by bit. The mother clutched her child tighter, whispering, "We are saved. We are saved." Though her heart still trembled, the child lifted his weak head for a moment. His eyes half closed, but a faint smile touched his lips. "Mother, it is real?" he asked. "Yes, little one," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "It is real. Someone has come for us." The sound grew louder, closer, until at last a crack of light appeared in the wall of snow. A beam of brightness broke through the darkness of the cave. The mother blinked, her eyes stinging after days in the shadows. A hand reached through the opening, covered in a thick glove, human in shape. The mother gasped, pulling her child back instinctively. Her heart leapt with both fear and relief. Then the snow broke wider, and a figure pushed inside. The human stumbled in, carrying a lantern in one hand, his breath fogged in the icy air. His clothes were thick, heavy, built for storms. A scarf covered half his face, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the cave, For a moment, silence held them. The human stared at the alien mother and child, and she stared back, her body tense, ready to shield her child with her last strength if she must. The human raised his lantern higher. The warm glow revealed the mother's thin frame, her trembling arms and the child clinging to her chest, pale and weak. Slowly, the human lowered himself onto one knee. His other hand moved, not to reach for a weapon, but to open his pack. From it, he pulled out a piece of bread, rough and simple, but food nonetheless. The mother's breath caught. Her eyes filled with tears as she realized he had not come to harm them. He had come with food. The child's weak eyes widened at the sight. His tiny hands twitched as if reaching for it. The mother hesitated, fear still whispering in her mind. But then the human broke the bread in half and gently stretched it out toward them. "Eat," the human said softly, his voice calm, steady. "You need this more than I do." Her hands shook as she reached out slowly, carefully. She took the bread and broke it into smaller pieces, pressing one into her child's hand. The boy chewed weakly, tears of relief slipping down his cheeks. The mother herself bit into a piece, the taste filling her mouth with life she thought she had lost. The human watched quietly, then sat down, his pack. He pulled out a small fire starter, striking it until sparks lit. Soon a small flame flickered to life. The cave filled with warmth for the first time in days. The mother's body shook, not only from cold but from emotions too heavy to carry. She wanted to speak to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. She could only nod, her eyes filled with tears. The human finally lowered his scarf. His face was rugged, his skin weathered from the storm. His eyes, though sharp, held kindness. He looked at the child and then at her. "You would not have lasted another night," he said quietly. "You are lucky I heard your voice through the storm." The mother bowed, her head whispering, "You saved us." Her voice was faint but full of emotion, but the human shook his head. "Not yet," he said firmly. "This cave is still a grave if we stay. We must leave before the mountain buries us alive." Her heart clenched with fear. The storm outside was merciless, but he was right. If they stayed, they would die here. The child clutched her tighter. "Mother, I do not want to go," he whispered. She stroked his hair gently. "We must, little one," she said softly. "We must trust him now." The human stood, pulling the lantern higher, his shadow stretched across the icy cave walls. He extended a hand toward her, rough but steady. "Come," he said. "I will take you down." The mother hesitated, staring at that hand. Trusting another species, a stranger, was dangerous. Yet his bread was in her child's stomach. His fire was warming their frozen bones, and his eyes held no cruelty, only resolve. At last, she placed her trembling hand in his. Her child pressed close against her. The human gripped her firmly, pulling her to her feet. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice low but strong. "The mountain is no friend tonight, but I will not let it take you." Her heart trembled at those words. A stranger, a human, was now their only hope. And as the lantern's glow lit the narrow path out of the cave, the storm outside screamed louder, as if warning them. The mountain would not let them go so easily. The lantern light flickered against the icy walls as the human led the way deeper into the storm. The alien mother held her child close, following with trembling steps. Her eyes never left the human's back, watching the broad figure moving steadily ahead. The storm howled around them, snow whipping like knives against their faces. Every step was heavy, the path slippery and uncertain. The mother struggled to keep her balance, and more than once she nearly fell. But each time the human's hand was there, steady and strong, pulling her back to her feet. Still, her heart was torn. Part of her wanted to trust him. He had given them food, warmth, and hope when death had seemed certain. But another part whispered warnings. Humans were not of her kind. Stories from her people said they were clever, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel. Was she walking into safety or into a trap? Her child, too weak to walk, clung tightly to her neck. His head rested against her shoulder. His small eyes blinked open to glance at the human. "Mother," he whispered faintly. "Is he our friend?" She did not answer right away. Her lips trembled. Finally, she whispered, "For now, we must believe so." The human's voice cut through the wind, firm and clear. "Stay close. The mountain is dangerous at night. The storm hides the cliffs. One wrong step, and it will be the last." The mother tightened her grip on her child. Her heart pounded at his words. She had already faced death in the cave. She could not let her child fall now. As they walked, the human suddenly paused, raising a hand for silence. The mother froze, her breath catching in her throat. Only the sound of the storm filled her ears. Then, there it was. A low rumble, deep beneath the snow. The human's jaw tightened. "Avalanche," he muttered. Before she could react, the ground trembled. Snow roared from above, crashing down the slope. The human grabbed her arm and pulled, her hard against the side of a rock. He threw his own body over hers, shielding both mother and child as the avalanche thundered past. Snow and ice rushed like a flood, blinding and deafening. For endless seconds she thought they would be buried alive. But then the rumble faded. The world grew quiet again. The human lifted himself, snow covering his shoulders. His lantern miraculously still burning, he looked at them, his face pale but determined. "We cannot stay here. The mountain wants us dead. We move." The mother stared at him in shock. He had risked his own life without hesitation to shield them. Why? Why would a human risk himself for strangers? Her chest tightened with confusion. They continued on, step after painful step. The storm raged, but the human did not falter. He moved with a strange strength, as though he carried more than just his own life. Finally, they reached a narrow cliff, where the path dropped into darkness. The wind tore at their clothes, threatening to throw them off balance. The mother clutched her child tighter, her body trembling. "I cannot," she whispered, staring at the deadly edge. The human turned, his eyes steady. "You can. Trust me. Hold my arm and do not look down." Her breath shook. Fear gripped her heart, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw no cruelty, no trickery, only resolve, only a silent promise. Slowly, she placed her hand into his. His grip was firm, steady, like iron. Together they crossed the narrow edge inch by inch. Every step felt like walking on the blade of death. But somehow, with his strength guiding her, they reached the other side. The mother collapsed against the rock, clutching her child. Tears of relief streamed down her cheeks. The human crouched beside them, his breathing heavy. He pulled another piece of bread from his pack, breaking it in half. He handed one piece to her, one to the child. The mother hesitated again. Her instincts screamed not to trust too easily. Yet her child reached for it with desperate hands, and she could not deny him. They ate slowly, cautiously, warmth spreading through their weak bodies. The human lit another small fire with what little he carried. Its glow pushed back the shadows. For the first time since leaving the cave, the mother felt warmth settle into her bones. Her child, finally full enough to relax, leaned against her chest and whispered, "He saved us again, Mother. He must be good." The mother looked at the human, who sat quietly, staring into the flames, his face unreadable, his eyes distant, as though haunted by his own battles. She wondered what kind of man he was, what past he carried that made him wander into deadly mountains alone. She wanted to ask, but her lips would not form the words. Instead, she simply whispered, "Thank you." The human's head turned slightly. His eyes met hers. For a brief moment, she thought she saw a flicker of softness in his gaze. Then he looked back to the fire, saying nothing. The storm outside had not ended. They were not safe yet. The mountain still loomed around them, waiting for its chance. But in that fragile circle of warmth, in the glow of the small fire, the alien mother realized something she had not dared believe before. Perhaps this human was not just a stranger. Perhaps he was their only chance at life. Her child drifted into sleep against her chest. She stroked his hair gently, her eyes never leaving the human. Her mind whispered questions, doubts, fears. But Above all, one thought repeated again and again, can I truly trust him? And outside, hidden by the storm, shadows moved in the snow. Eyes watched from the distance. Not all dangers on the mountain came from nature. Some came from those who hunted the weak. The storm did not rest. Its winds tore at the mountain like angry spirits. The human tightened his scarf and adjusted the lantern in his hand. We move, he said firmly. His voice was low but carried authority. The alien mother hesitated. She clutched her child against her chest. His small body pressed weakly into her arms, her legs trembled with exhaustion. Every step already felt impossible, yet the human's sharp gaze left no room for argument. If they stayed, the mountain would claim them. Snow crunched under heavy boots as he led the way. The mother followed, her thin feet sinking deep into the drifts. Sometimes the snow swallowed, her legs to the knees. Sometimes icy rocks cut against her skin. But she did not stop. The child's faint breathing was the only sound that kept her going. The path wound downward, but it was no path meant for the weak. Slopes tilted sharply, stones loose under the weight of their steps. At one point, the mother's foot slipped. She cried out, clutching her child as she nearly toppled. The abyss yawned beside her like a hungry mouth. The human reacted instantly. His strong hand shot out and grabbed her arm, pulling her back with a force that nearly dislocated her shoulder. For a heartbeat, she was pressed against his chest, his lantern swaying wildly in the storm. Careful, he growled, his breath warm against her ear. One mistake here, and you're gone. Her heart raced, not only from fear but from the closeness. She stepped back quickly, clutching her child tighter. I will not fall again, she whispered. The human gave no reply. He simply turned and continued forward, his movements steady, controlled, like a man who had done this many times before. Hours seemed to pass, though it was only minutes. The storm erased all sense of time. Hunger gnawed at the mother's stomach. Weakness clouded her vision. More than once she stumbled, and more than once the human pulled her back from danger. Finally, they reached a ridge where the mountain dropped into a sharp descent. The slope ahead was almost vertical, carved by ice and wind. The mother gasped. We cannot climb down that? The human knelt, pulling a thick coil of rope from his pack. He tied it tightly around a boulder, testing its strength. Then he looped the rope around his waist and handed the end to her. You will go first. Hold the rope. Press your back to the wall and step slowly, I will follow. Fear clutched her chest. Her child whimpered softly. Mother, I am afraid. She kissed his forehead, forcing strength into her voice. We must be brave, little one, trust me. With trembling hands, she took the rope and began the descent. The icy wall scraped her back. Her feet searched desperately for holds on the frozen rock. Every step was agony. The child whimpered, burying his face in her neck above them. The human's voice guided her, steady and commanding. Left foot lower, hold tight, do not look down. She obeyed, every muscle screaming. Her arms ached from holding her child and gripping the rope. But slowly, painfully, she made her way downward. Step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. When at last her feet touched solid ground, her knees gave out. She collapsed into the snow, clutching her child. Her body shook with exhaustion and relief. She looked up as the human descended with ease, his boots finding holds like he had done this 1,000 times before. When he landed beside her, she whispered, How can you move so easily? He shrugged, his eyes shadowed. Because I have fallen before. She wanted to ask more, but he turned away quickly, lighting the lantern again. His past was locked behind his silence. They pressed on, deeper into the storm. But soon, a new danger revealed itself. Shadows moved in the snow ahead, faint at first, then clearer. Figures tall and thin, their outlines sharp against the white. The mother's heart leapt in fear. She recognized them, mountain scavengers, outcasts who preyed on the weak. They had no mercy. They would kill for supplies. The human's hand went to his belt, where a short blade hung. He stepped forward, lantern casting light on his face, his eyes hardened like steel. The scavengers hissed through the storm, their voices carrying mockery. A human? With prey of his own? One laughed, pointing at the alien mother and child. He brings food for us. The mother's body trembled. She shielded her child instinctively, her eyes darted to the human. Would he abandon them now? Would he trade their lives for his own safety? But the human did not step back. His voice cut like a blade through the storm. You will not touch them. The scavengers laughed again, their figures circling. The storm howled louder, snow swirling between them, the mother's breath. Caught in her throat, the child whimpered against her chest. She whispered, "Please, save us again." The human lifted his blade, his lantern casting his shadow tall against the snow. His jaw was set, his eyes sharp with unshakable resolve. "If the mountain wants a fight," he growled, "then let it come." The scavengers drew closer, their eyes glinting in the storm, and there, in the deadly cold of the mountain, another battle began. The battle on the mountain ended as quickly as it began. The scavengers, seeing the human's unshakable stance and the fire burning in his eyes, decided not to fight. They hissed, cursed, and vanished back into the storm. Their shadows melted into the snow, leaving only silence behind. The alien mother's knees gave way. She fell into the snow, clutching her child. Her body shook not only from exhaustion but from relief. She looked up at the human, still standing tall, his blade in one hand, lantern in the other. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths as though he had expected the danger all along. You saved us again," she whispered. The human lowered his blade and looked at her. His face was unreadable, his eyes steady. "We keep moving," was all he said. And so they did, step after step, through the endless storm. The mother's body ached with every movement, her child heavy in her arms. Yet she pressed forward, guided by the human's lantern. At last, after what felt like hours, a faint glow appeared in the distance. A shimmer of light piercing the dark curtain of snow. The mother blinked, unsure if her weary eyes were deceiving her. "What is that?" she whispered. The human's voice softened. "The village. We are close now." Her heart raced. A village meant safety, warmth, food, life. For days she had thought death was their only future. Now, for the first time, hope felt real. As they drew closer, the glow grew brighter. Soon she saw it clearly. Rows of wooden houses, their windows glowing with golden firelight. Smoke rising from chimneys. Lanterns hanging at doorways to fight the storm. It was a sight, so beautiful she almost wept. A village alive in the heart of the frozen mountains. The human led them down the last slope. At the edge of the village, figures emerged, men and women wrapped in thick coats, carrying lanterns and tools. They had seen the human's light approaching, and they gathered quickly. When their eyes fell on the alien mother and her child, shock spread across their faces. Some gasped, others whispered, fear flashed in their eyes. "What is this?" One man demanded, "He brings outsiders into our home?" "They are not ours," another said sharply. "We do not shelter strangers, especially not them." His voice dripped with suspicion as his eyes locked on the alien mother. She shrank back, holding her child tighter. Her body trembled. Her mind screamed that they would cast her out, that all this struggle had been for nothing. The human stepped forward, his shadow long under the lantern light. His voice cut through the rising whispers. "They were starving in the mountains. The child was dying. I found them. I carried them here. They live because I did not turn away. And I will not turn away now." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. Some shook their heads, fear clouding their faces, but others lowered their eyes, ashamed. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, her voice softer than the rest. "A child should not suffer," she said firmly, "even if they are not ours." She looked at the alien mother and added, "Bring them in, give them fire and food tomorrow. We may argue, but tonight they must live." The crowd quieted. No one spoke against her. Slowly the villagers parted, allowing the human to lead the mother and child forward. The warmth of the village hit them like a wave. The smell of food drifted from the houses. The glow of fires burned in every window. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She had dreamed of such a sight inside the cold cave, and now it was real. The human guided them into a small house near the edge of the village. He pushed open the wooden door, revealing a single room lit by a bright fire. A table stood in the corner, and a bed with thick blankets rested against the wall. "Sit," he said, his voice softer now. "Rest here." The mother lowered herself onto the bed, placing her child down gently. The boy stirred, his eyes opening slightly as warmth touched his skin. His lips curved into a small smile. "It's warm, Mother," he whispered. Before closing his eyes again, the human went to the table, filling a bowl with hot soup that had been left ready. He carried it to her, placing it in her hands. The steam rose, carrying the smell of vegetables and herbs. Her hands shook as she lifted it. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she fed the first spoonful to her child. His small body relaxed as he swallowed, color slowly returning to his face. She looked up at the human, whispering, "You gave us life, not once, but again and again." The human's eyes softened for just a moment, then he turned away, standing near the fire. His voice was quiet, almost distant. "No, you saved him. I only helped you keep your promise." The mother pressed her lips against her child's forehead, her heart overflowing. For the first time in days, she let herself breathe, but outside, not all hearts in the village were at peace. Behind closed doors, voices rose. Some argued that strangers were a danger, that humans should not risk their safety for outsiders. Others whispered that the mountain scavengers would soon come, searching for the ones who escaped. The human knew it too. His eyes lingered on the fire, shadows flickering across his face. He had brought them this far, but the struggle was not over, and deep in the mountains, the scavengers who had fled were already gathering again. Their eyes burned with anger. They had lost prey once, but they would not lose it twice. The fire crackled softly inside the small house, casting warm light across the walls. For the alien mother and her child, it felt like another world. They were no longer trapped in the frozen cave, no longer choking on hunger or despair. Here, in the human's village, they had found warmth. The child slept peacefully under the blankets, his, breathing soft and steady. The mother sat beside him, her hands gently stroking his hair. Her eyes glistened as she whispered to herself, "He is alive, he is safe, the promise is kept." The human stood near the fire, silent as always, his face unreadable, but his eyes never strayed too far from them. He had carried them through death itself, and yet he acted as though it was only his duty. Outside, the storm had finally begun to break. The winds softened, the snowflakes fell slower, and through the cracks of the window, faint starlight appeared. It was as if the universe itself had finally allowed peace. But peace did not last long. The next morning, the villagers gathered. Their faces carried worry, fear, and anger. Some still whispered that strangers had no place among them. Others feared the scavengers would return, bringing violence upon their homes. The human stood firm, his voice sharp as steel. "They are under my protection. If anyone tries to cast them out, they will answer to me," the crowd murmured. Some lowered their eyes, unwilling to face his gaze. They all knew him. He was the man who never broke his word, the man who survived the mountains when no one else dared. His reputation silenced their doubts, at least for now. Still, tension lingered. The alien mother felt it in every glance, in every hushed word. She wanted to shrink, to hide, but her child's small hand held hers, reminding her to be strong. That night, the peace shattered. The scavengers returned, slipping through the storm like shadows. Their eyes glowed with greed and anger. They wanted what they had lost: prey, supplies, and revenge. The first cry of alarm rang through the village. The bells were struck. Men and women rushed to defend their homes. The mother clutched her child, her heart racing. "Not again," she whispered. "Please, not again." The human burst into the house, his blade already drawn, his eyes locked on her. "Stay here, protect the child, I will deal with them." "No," she cried, standing with trembling legs. "If they find us, they will not stop. They will kill him first." She pressed her child into his arms, tears streaming down her face. "Take him. Save him if I cannot." For the first time since she met him, the human's expression broke. His eyes widened in shock at her plea, but then he shook his head, his voice fierce. No, I will not let either of you die. We face this together. The door burst open and shadows filled the room. The scavengers hissed, their blades glinting in the firelight. The human moved like lightning, his weapon clashing with theirs. His body shielded the mother and child as he fought. The battle was fierce, steel against steel, snow and blood mixing on the floor. The human's blade struck true, his strength unyielding. He fought not as a man protecting himself, but as one carrying the weight of lives more precious than his. The mother, though weak, grabbed a burning log from the fire, swinging it with desperate strength. She struck one scavenger across the chest, flames catching his cloak. He screamed and fled into the night. The others faltered, seeing her courage beside the human's fury. At last, the scavengers broke, retreating into the storm. Their shouts, fading as they vanished into the mountains, silence fell, broken only by heavy breaths. The human lowered his blade, blood dripping from the steel. His chest heaved, his face pale. The mother collapsed to her knees, clutching her child. Her body trembled, not from cold but from the weight of what had just passed. Tears fell freely. Down her cheeks she looked up at the human and whispered, "You saved us." Again and again. When even the stars abandoned us, you stood. The child stirred, his small eyes opening. He looked at the human with awe. His weak voice whispered, "Guardian." The word hung in the air like a prayer. The human blinked, his hard face softening for the first time. He looked at the boy, then at the mother, and though he said nothing, his silence carried acceptance. The villagers gathered at the doorway, having seen the fight. For the first time, there was no anger. In their eyes, no suspicion, only respect. The human had defended their village, not only strangers, but all of them. The woman who had spoken before stepped forward, her voice steady. "They belong here now, no one will cast them out." The crowd murmured in agreement, their fear broken by the sight of courage. The alien mother bowed her head, her tears falling onto her child's hair. "We will never forget," she whispered. "This will be remembered, not as survival, but as a miracle." The boy nestled against her, his small hand reaching for the human's, gripping it with surprising strength. And for the first time, the human allowed himself a faint smile. The storm outside had finally passed. Stars glittered above the mountains, the cave, the hunger, the fear. It was all behind them now. What remained was a memory, a promise, and a bond between worlds. And so, in the frozen mountains where death had once surrounded them, life triumphed. A mother's promise was kept, a child's life was saved, and a human's kindness became the miracle they would remember forever.